This story is inspired by real experiences, names, locations, and certain elements were changed to protect identities and enhance dramaturgy. The emotional journey, struggles, and inner transformation portrayed here are rooted in real human experiences. She was never taught how to rest, only how to endure. From a young age, she learned that being strong was not a choice but a requirement. Life did not ask if she was ready. It simply handed her responsibility and waited for her to adapt. On the outside, she looked composed, capable, even admired. People described her as reliable, grounded, resilient, but no one saw the invisible weight she carried, the silent exhaustion that grew heavier with each passing year. She became the one others leaned on. The listener, the problems, the steady presence in moments of chaos. And slowly, without realizing it, she learned to place her own needs last, not occasionally, but always. There was a time when she dreamed freely, when joy didn't require justification, and rest didn't come with guilt. But those memories felt distant now, like pages from a book she once loved and never finished. She told herself she was fine, that everyone felt tired, that emotional emptiness was just part of being mature, responsible, productive. She normalized her own depletion because acknowledging it felt selfish. Silence became her coping mechanism, not because she had nothing to say, but because explaining her feelings often felt harder than carrying them alone. Silence was easier, safer, less demanding. She learned to smile through discomfort and translate pain into functionality. As long as she was useful, she believed she was valuable. As long as she kept going, she didn't have to face what she was losing inside. Years passed quietly. No dramatic breakdown. No visible collapse. Just a slow erosion of enthusiasm, curiosity, and emotional presence that few people noticed, including her. The realization arrived unexpectedly. One ordinary moment, one ordinary reflection, when she suddenly felt disconnected from the woman staring back at her. Not broken, who's unfamiliar. That unfamiliarity frightened her more than pain ever had, because pain meant feeling. And she had begun to wonder if she was slowly disappearing from her own life. For the first time, she allowed herself to be honest, not publicly, not dramatically, but privately. She admitted what she had denied for years. She was exhausted in a way sleep could not fix. She wasn't weak. She wasn't ungrateful. She was depleted, and no one had ever taught her that depletion was not a personal failure. Letting go terrified her, releasing expectations, releasing perfection, releasing the belief that her worth depended on how much she could tolerate without complaint. Healing didn't begin with confidence. It began with discomfort, with questioning patterns that once kept her safe, but now kept her small. She learned that growth does not feel empowering at first. It feels awkward, lonely, uncertain. It asks you to disappoint people who benefited from your silence. Boundaries became her first act of rebellion. Quiet, shaky, and imperfect. Saying no felt foreign. Resting without explanation felt almost wrong. Some days she felt strong. Other days, fragile. She learned that strength was not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to remain present through it. The world did not slow down for her healing. Responsibilities remained. Expectations persisted. But something within her shifted. She stopped abandoning herself to meet every demand. She began listening again to her body, to her emotions, to the quiet intuition she had ignored for years in favor of approval. There were setbacks, old habits, guilt returned. But she noticed something new. She recovered faster. She no longer collapsed under Instead of criticizing herself, she observed, adjusted, continued. Progress became quieter but more sustainable. She redefined strength. It was no longer measured by endurance alone, but by self-respect. Rest became restorative instead of shameful. Solitude stopped feeling lonely and began to feel safe. Silence became a place of clarity instead of avoidance. Not everyone understood her transformation. Some resisted it. Some preferred the exhausted version of her because it was easier to access. She learned that growth sometimes requires disappointing others, and that surviving this discomfort was part of becoming whole. Her confidence no longer came from control or validation. It came from alignment. From living in a way that felt honest, even when it felt uncomfortable. She stopped chasing a version of herself designed to please everyone else. Instead, she focused on becoming someone she could respect. The past did not disappear, but it no longer dictated her limits. It became context, not condemnation. She understood that sensitivity was not weakness, that softness was not failure, that rest was not laziness. Her life did not suddenly become perfect, but it became real, and real was something she could finally sustain. She stopped waiting to feel ready before changing. She began where she was, uncertain, imperfect, but willing. Each small choice accumulated into something powerful. Choosing herself once made it easier to choose herself again. She realized that survival had taught her discipline, But healing was teaching her compassion. For the first time, she felt present in her own life. Not rushing, not numbing, not disappearing. She no longer feared slowing down. She feared returning to a life where she was absent from herself. Her worth stopped being measured by productivity. It became rooted in existence. She allowed joy to return slowly, without pressure. Laughter without explanation. Rest without justification. She accepted that becoming whole was not linear. Some days felt lighter, others heavy. Both were valid. She learned to stay with herself during discomfort instead of escaping into obligation. And in that staying, she discovered resilience deeper than endurance. She stopped asking who she needed to be for others and started asking who she needed to be for herself. The answer changed everything. She was no longer chasing approval. She was building peace. No longer proving strength. She was practicing honesty. Her life did not transform loudly. It transformed quietly, consistently, and deeply. She learned that healing is not dramatic. It is repetitive, patient, personal. She was still becoming, and that was no longer frightening. Because choosing yourself is not a single moment. It is a daily act of courage. And each day, she chose herself again. Not perfectly, but intentionally. If this story touched you, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe.